Space, stars, explosive titles, a mysterious beam approaching from the far left of the screen. We zoom in and, surprise, it's Buzz Lightyear hurtling towards a strange planet. He burns into the atmosphere, the musical score booming in our eardrums, and starts weaving in and out of a dangerous space canyon at warp speeds. This is the first 2 minutes of Toy Story 2, a sequel from a blooming studio who would go on to make some of the greatest animated films of all time. I watched Toy Story 2 recently after a decade of not seeing it, and I was surprised at just how good it was. It got me wondering whether this film is the perfect sequel. Here's what Rotten Tomatoes has to say about Toy Story 2. The rare sequel that arguably improves upon its predecessor, Toy Story 2 uses storytelling, gorgeous animation, and a talented cast to deliver another rich, movie-going experience for all ages. Toy Story 2's critic score on Rotten Tomatoes is a perfect 100%. So do I think it's the perfect sequel? Abso-freaking-lutely I do, 100%. And in this video, I'll detail why. First, let's ask the question. What makes for a perfect sequel? For me, there's two things a great sequel needs to do. First, it needs to be similar to its predecessor. A Toy Story 2 movie without Woody or Buzz and it suddenly turns into some horror flick, it just wouldn't feel right, obviously. You need it to have the same DNA, and that's exactly what John Lasseter set out to do. He said the intention with the sequel was to respect the original Toy Story and create that world again. Alright, the second thing is you needed to improve upon the original and take it in new directions, without going overboard, of course. I think the John Wick series is a perfect example of this. The action in the John Wick films improve with every entry that they add to the series, but they don't go overboard. Well, they kind of do go overboard, but that's kind of what they're supposed to do, right? That's the whole point of John Wick. But they've always gone overboard, so it works for that franchise. Jack Sparrow in Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Man's Chest is a perfect example of going overboard. They took a great character, stripped him of his intelligence and all of his interesting qualities, turned the volume way up on the comedy, and it just made him such an annoying character. Let's break down why Toy Story 2 does what all great sequels do. Number one, Toy Story 2 has the same DNA as the original Toy Story. And what did Toy Story 1 do so well? If you could boil it down to just a couple words, what would they be? For one, it was funny. Second, it was extremely heartfelt. Third, it was madly creative. And four, it was definitely scary in some parts with Sid's dog and everything. It's a film that surprisingly packs quite a big punch despite it being about a bunch of small toys. Ideas of jealousy, belonging, growing up, self-doubt, and feeling wanted are all over the first movie. Pixar humanizes things like toys, monsters, bugs, robots, rats, fish, and even superheroes. Oh, we have a bunch of self-aware toys who can talk and run around at their own free will? What would they be afraid of? What would they do? What would they think about? It makes sense that these toys would be mortified at the idea of their owner buying new toys. It makes sense that they would have problems feeling wanted because they know that they can be replaced in a heartbeat. And that's exactly what these doubts are. They're the heartbeat of Toy Story. And it's a powerful one because no matter who you are, no matter where you grew up or what your circumstances are, all of us have this deep fear of not belonging, of being abandoned, of being forgotten about. And we can empathize with these toys on a profound level because of that. To me, Toy Story 2 has all of these elements in spades. It's funny, it's creative, it's heartfelt, and it's scary. It has all of them in spades, and it actually improves upon all of them in the sequel. I'm going to get to that right now. For one, Toy Story 2 is way funnier than the first one. My favorite line of the movie is when Buzz calls Ham a slotted pig.
Say, where'd you get the cool belt, Buzz?
Well, slotted pig, they're standard issue.
In fact, the whole new Buzz storyline is hilarious to me. In the first movie, Buzz Lightyear was an insufferable moron who thought that he could, do all of these ridiculous, fantastical things. That worked well for us to empathize with Woody and then feel bad for Buzz later on when his whole worldview comes crashing down and he realizes he's not a superhero, he's a toy. In this film, it works for different reasons. It is ridiculously funny.
Just like you said, Lizard Man, in the shadows to the left. Okay, let's move!
And it's not just funny. New Buzz is a scene stealer. Another hilarious part of the story is when Zurg escapes Al's toy barn and confronts our heroes in the elevator shaft. Watching Toy Story 2 remake Star Wars' most famous scene was something I wasn't expecting as a child.
You killed my father!
No, Buzz. I am your father.
Another wildly entertaining character is Al. Like, you will never not know what's on his mind in this movie. It's like he did a line of coke before delivering every single line. I used to hate him as a kid, but watching him as an adult, I don't know, he was just a lot funnier. Another funny thing Toy Story 2 did was put all the main characters in ridiculous situations, and I'm going to talk more about that in just a second. Okay, so here's number 2. Toy Story 2 is way more heartfelt than the first one, and that's saying something. I think all of us remember Jesse's story told brilliantly through a montage. That one scene stands out to me more than any other scene in Toy Story 1. One thing we also need to understand is that in a sequel, we have history with these characters. If you do things right, you get to build upon what came before. Like, everybody already has history with these characters. We get to come in with, an hour and a half of time spent with these characters already from the first movie. And if you play your cards right, you can basically skip all of that character development in the sequel and just build on what came before.
Somewhere in that pat of stuffing is a toy who taught me that life's only worth living if you're being loved by a kid. And I traveled all this way to rescue that toy because I believed him.
Toy Story 2 builds upon Buzz and Woody's characters and takes them in new directions. Buzz gets to see his older self represented by a new toy. He gets to see the aisle that's nothing but Buzz Lightyear dolls and reflect on how important he is to kids everywhere and how far he's come in his own journey. But he also gets to feel abandoned when he gets defeated by New Buzz and when New Buzz becomes an imposter and travels with Ham and Rex and Slinky Dog. That abandonment is the same feeling that Woody feels when he's shelved earlier in the movie. This movie hits harder than the first because for me, the first movie was just about the jealousy that Woody had for Buzz Lightyear. We never really felt like Woody was in danger of being abandoned. Andy was still playing with him and stuff like that. He was just jealous of Buzz. But this movie steers directly into that deep-rooted fear that toys have, which is they might be abandoned. There's always the threat of being abandoned. Woody gets ripped and shelved. He goes from most wanted toy to feeling like the least wanted in a single moment. Then he gets stolen by Al and realizes he's a collector's item. So he's back to being wanted by everybody. That emotional roller coaster for Woody is powerful, and I like the way that they kind of juxtapose being wanted by a child and being wanted as a collector's item in the same movie. This film's focus on abandonment, belonging, and feeling wanted are what set it a peg ahead of the original Toy Story, because I feel like these topics and ideas have much more weight than, just being jealous of somebody else. Let's talk about creativity here. Toy Story 2 took a lot of creative risks, in my opinion. The original Toy Story felt a lot safer than this movie. That's not to say it wasn't groundbreaking or innovative. Let me just give you an example. The opening scene of Toy Story 2 shows Buzz flying around the galaxy on a mission to find something. First off, what the heck? I remember having my mind blown watching this as a boy. Is it a dream sequence? Is it a television program? Is it Andy's imagination? What is it? We later find out it's a video game, but look, they told a better story in 3 to 4 minutes than they did in the entirety of Lightyear. That movie was awful. This is a good example of a creative risk. For the first time in this franchise's history, the filmmakers took us out of the real world and placed us directly in one of fantasy. And they did it in the opening scene, no less. What a way to start off the movie with a bang. Announce that you're not afraid to take risks, and deliver one of the greatest scenes in Pixar animation history. That scene was actually supposed to appear in the first Toy Story movie in the opening scene, but they scrapped the idea. Later, after he rips his arm, Woody has a nightmare of Andy abandoning him. He gets dropped to the floor, cascades through a cavern of darkness, and lands in a garbage bin where the corpses of old forgotten toys reanimate and drag him into the abyss. Excuse me, this is a little kid's movie we're watching here. The first Toy Story movie was scary for sure, but there were no trippy scenes like this one. Like this scene kind of scarred me for life as a child, I'm not gonna lie. Funny enough, this scene was also supposed to be in the original Toy Story, but they deleted it and they decided to repurpose it for Toy Story 2. Then we have the scene that nobody can forget, the scene where Woody gets cleaned by Old Man Cleaner, I guess is what you'd say. This sequence lasts about 2 minutes, but it left a stain in the hearts of children everywhere ever since. It practically started the satisfying video trend we see so much of today on the internet. Toy Story 2 did that. Like, where in Toy Story 1 can we see this? Nowhere. Toy Story 2 also has bigger set pieces that lean into the scale of these toys even more. For instance, the baggage transportation system at the airport. Like I will forever watch my bag go past the check-in counter and disappear behind the plastic drapes, and I'll try to see if I can see behind those drapes at all. I still do that to this day, and I'm 30 years old. Pixar used to be a lot about fun, like the East Australian Current in Finding Nemo. That reminded us of roller coasters as kids, right? In The Incredibles, when we watched Dash run across water and best one of the minions of Syndrome, that was exhilarating. I simply do not see moments like these in modern Pixar movies. I just don't, that are just pure fun and exhilaration. I don't. And these are fun moments that you were never expecting, but when you look back at it, they seem like they were inevitable all along. The baggage transportation system scene is definitely one of those for me. Having an endless conveyor belt of bags as far as the eye can see is pure eye candy, and having toys run around in an environment like this is such fun. In fact, the decision to have Ham, Rex, Slinky, and Buzz go into the real world to save Woody was an incredible creative decision. You get to have all these incredible moments where you can play with scale, environments we'll never be able to travel to, and danger we'll never be able to relate to. We can travel through an air duct with toys. We can have scenes on the outside of an elevator shaft. We can go behind the scenes at an airport. We can chase down an actual airplane on horseback. Toy Story 1 took place mostly in houses, and that's a fine creative decision. However, for the sequel, you need to go bigger and better, right? Having the entire movie take place outside of Andy's house was a massive creative risk. I mean, how can you seriously have a bunch of toys running around in real life without getting spotted? The film decides to lean into the zaniness of that idea in a scene where Buzz and company need to cross a busy street. Disguised as traffic cones, they start crossing the street and end up, of course, causing a multi-car accident. When I watched this scene again, I was in tears. It was hilarious. This film's ability to not take itself so seriously, but at the same time deliver an extremely heartfelt story about a bunch of toys, is nothing short of magical. It's an animation studio at the top of its game, and luckily for us, Pixar will remain at the top of its game for the next decade. Hello everybody, if you like this video, please consider subscribing to my Substack. There's a written version of this video on there, as well as other written version of film breakdowns that I've done in the past. The link to sign up is right in the description, so go ahead and sign up if you want to. Also, if you want to help me out, just hit the like button on this video. Subscribe if you want to see more film breakdowns in the future. And let me know down in the comments what movies you'd like me to break down in the future. I'd love to hear from you. All right. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time.